Shoko, don't let yourself turn out like those two!
I'm not trash like they are, and I never will be.
Huh? Wait, 2 days?
Was the cursed spirit barrier one of those that messes with time? They're rare, but they do happen now and then. It is odd it took so long since May was with you.
That would make sense.
Something wrong?
Not really, but actually that means it involved 2 full days of labor. So I was just thinking about how to rewrite the invoice for extra fees now owed to me.
She's planning to overcharge again.
More.
Okay. Ready. Some things are hard to do
Sonic, you finally found your family. I know it hasn't always been easy, but you didn't change who you are in here.
Yeah, in my lungs.
Or your heart.
There's been a high-level security breach. And we need Team Sonic.
The ending of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 just changed everything. Betrayals, tragic deaths, and a final twist that nobody saw coming. But what really happened? What does this mean for Chapter 5? Let's go ahead and break down every hidden clue, every shocking reveal, and the terrifying fate of our character. And spoiler alert, you're not gonna believe what we uncovered. So for starters, let's rewind a bit. Throughout Chapter 4, we were led to believe that Dr. Harley Sawyer, aka the Doctor, was our biggest enemy. He controlled the safe haven, ran, twisted experiments, and even tried to kill us. But as we defeated him, we found out that he wasn't actually the true mastermind. The real villain, of course, as we know, is the prototype, which he was working with. Obviously, Poppy revealed her plan to us. She wanted to destroy this factory, but the prototype was always one step ahead. While we thought we were being guided by Ollie, it turns out in the end that the prototype has been impersonating him this entire time. Well, maybe not the entire time, but more on that later. The prototype's deception led to the death of everyone in the safe haven, the same place that Doughy tried so hard to keep sacred. As a matter of fact, the whole reason we even found the Omni Hand and rescued it was to keep these kids alive. However, the same explosives we were going to use to take this place down, and Doughy tried to talk us out of, wiped everybody out within the safe haven, except for you and Doughy. But this was only the beginning of our nightmare. So let's talk about Doughy a little bit more. He's trying to take out the prototype along with us. If that's the case, things get really interesting, because when we saw him fall in Chapter 1, we just assumed that he had the same fate as Kissy Missy, taken away and put in to the next plan that the prototype was trying to create. But if he wasn't sucked into the prototype somehow,
Okaroon saying she'd never make out with a nerd like him. They out here arguing like a married couple, and just like any married couple.
Oh man, I love Christmas! I also love taking a piss on Christmas. I also like pissing on my family's presents on Christmas. I like a lot about Christmas. Where the hell are my balls?
Do you like Okaroon? Do you like him? Do you want him to bone you? Do you want him to bone you?
Shut up! He's not my boyfriend! I also say, look at this. Oh, hey, Pookie, how's it going?
Oh, he's totally your boyfriend.
Is not! Stop lying! Stop moaning! Stop moaning! It's like low-key attractive. What I meant to say was that my balls are gone! Well, that's what happens when you don't bend over for me!
Okaroon does his depressed walk home and bumps into a girl on accident, and she starts gassing him up. And then Momo spawns in and is hella confused on how this woman knows Okaroon. This girl walks by Momo and starts talking mad shit about Okaroon, essentially calling him a whole ass peon. So Momo decides to take things into her own hands. She She then proceeds to grab onto Okarun and exits the school with swag. She later apologizes to Okarun for latching out on him in front of everybody earlier. Truth be told, she enjoys talking to him more than anyone else. And then Okarun just casually reveals his balls are missing, and it cuts to her laughing hysterically, and Seiko instantly realizes something sus is going on. So she slaps Okarun on the back, and Momo rips a spirit out of him that then brings this cat figure to life, and it casually hits the dash. It's a Minecraft manhunt to hunt it down. Momo taps into her psychic powers and grabs its aura, resulting in it being stunned when they catch up to it, and turns out the cat is the pervy granny herself. She was hiding herself inside Okarun the whole time, but this ends up backfiring since her powers still remain inside of Okarun. Only her consciousness is in the cat figure. So Momo tries to talk no jutsu pervy granny into giving Okarun his balls back in exchange for her powers. And
Give him back!
I don't have them, I swear. I sort of lost them. I'm not sure where.
the search for Okarun's balls has begun. And of course, this pink-haired bitch has one of them. Introducing Ira. She's the cliche narcissistic pretty girl who views everyone else below her. She just loves to lead guys on, which is why she teased Okarun the day before. But since she discovered one of the balls, her third eye awakened, and now she can see Momo's psychic arms. So in order to get her get back, she starts spreading rumors that Momo is a bop. And when Okarun arrives at class, he finds out about these rumors and essentially uses Conqueror's Haki on the guy who told them before casually resuming his day, and then proceeds to get interrupted by pervy granny. So he hits the dimmies, and bro in the back is just as confused as I am, but he bumps into Momo to tell her the news before being interrupted by Ira, and she only wants to talk to Momo, so they end up getting separated. Ira ends up bringing Momo to the most suspect spot ever and jumps her ass, but Momo easily gets rid of Ira's friends. How the fuck are they not dead? Ira tries to use Okarun's ball to exorcise Momo like she's some sort of demon, and then a real demon spawns in and swoops her. Okarun swoops in and instantly dashes towards it, but gets eaten. And for some reason, this yokai has a very strong obsession with Ira, but Ira calls her a monster, so she eats her and gets triggered, then proceeds to beat the fuck.
Now come on! You can't take us all at once! Okay, he took us all at once.
At a Momo before eating her as well, and then she turns into Dabi. Turns out that cross Ira was holding was a lighter, and pervy granny told Momo to use it on the yokai's hair before she got eaten. That's that old head ball knowledge right there. And as soon as the gang is spat out, they instantly prepare for a counterattack, but acrobatic Silky starts raging, so Okarun gets to running away, but he gets slapped and lets go of Ira. But right before acrobatic Silky can go to hold of her, she gets stuck because her hair got tied up while she was rampaging, but she uses brute force to break out of it. But Momo uses her psychic powers to create an opportunity for Okarun to finish her off. But this nigga doesn't know how to do it, and Momo is just as surprised as we are. Acrobatic Silky breaks through Momo's arms, and it looks like a nurse's office right after the incident, and she's a fucking freak. Her assistant pulls up and she literally whips him. Ira's friends arrive and instantly remove her from the premise, leaving Momo and Okarun alone. And Okarun finally tells Momo what led to him and Ira being in the position they were when she found them. And Momo can't stop blushing after finding out he wanted to get stronger without her knowing. And it looks like they finally about to have a moment.
We found you! Okarun's here too! Don't scare me like that! Now you...
Meanwhile, Ira is crashing out because it turns out she was also involved in the incident, and when her supporters started badmouthing Momo, she decided to come clean of starting the rumors. And would you look who it is? They end up putting their differences aside for the meantime, and... Mantis Strip wakes up and the whole squad is here. They give him some curry and invite him to their very chaotic dinner. And after, he finally tells its origin. He comes from a planet of war and his son is very sick. So in order to pay for his treatment, he takes sketchy jobs. Okarun wants to help him out, but there's not much he can realistically do. So Mantis takes his leave before being stunned by Seiko, who notices he smells like something very familiar. Remember how when Mantis spawned back in, he was surrounded by a white liquid? Well, turns out out his blood is milk, and drinking it for the first time changes his life forever. So he captures a cow in his UFO to take home. Everyone is shocked except Momo. She's just happy to be here. The day still isn't over since we cut to the trio begging Seiko to get them new uniforms, and she decides to buy them new ones except for Momo. She has to do an impression of Hirosho Abe, and there just happens to be someone at the door.
Who the fuck is this nigga, bro?
モモの幼馴染で初恋相手だ。
Yeah, there's trouble in paradise. The nigga who made fun of Momo when they were younger, aka her first crush, is back. And to make things worse, he's here to live with Momo because his parents have fallen ill. And worst of all, he has a crush on Momo now. My nigga Okarun is getting mogged in 4K. Meanwhile, Ira is still convinced this is part of Momo's plan to take over the world and storms off. And Okarun takes his depressed ass home as well. But Momo is very agitated.
また明日でしょ。次、オカルンが言う番。
The next morning.
Okarun can't stop thinking about how close Momo and Gigi are. He literally drew scenarios of him getting cucked and imagined it too. He's beyond obsessed, and his worst dreams are becoming a reality as Gigi is officially in Momo's class and he sits right next to her. My man's Okarun is back on the grind now.
There you are.
I'm at the goal.
Momo is here to comfort Okarun, but just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you can't score. As Gigi spawns out of nowhere and instantly makes Momo blush. This nigga Okarun is in distraught.
If you wasn't invited, don't ask to go.
He slowly exits the premise, and now there's a running man heading right towards him. The running man blows past him and is on pace towards Momo, but Gigi has a clutch, and oh my god, is that Okarun's second nut? Nah, I wish. It's just a shiny Christmas ornament. That's not stopping Momo from chasing the specimen though, so now Okarun has to do the dash yet again.
Here we go!
Momo grabs onto Okarun, but this nigga is crazy as he tries to isekai Momo and Gigi, but now Okarun clutches up. He launches off a speeding car, and now this chase really looking like Rooftop Run. They finally get bro cornered, but right before he's captured, he disassembles himself. Look at Okarun's reaction, man. What a chill guy. Bro reassembles himself like he got the chop fruit. Fuck being a running man. He buggied a clown. The gang ends up losing track of him, but Momo has an ace up her sleeve. They find bro laying on the ground with his ass out, and Momo might be the second coming of Satan since she was beating this nigga's heart up and put the peace sign up after finding him in pain. That's not stopping bro from completing his mission though, as he climbs upon the scrapyard, and after shoveling through the top, he stumbles upon what he was looking for, the love of his life. And even though she's not in the best condition, that doesn't stop him from confessing his love to her. This is true love, and seeing this makes Okarun compare his relationship with Momo to theirs, and from this point on, he'll dedicate his life to keeping her safe.
1 hour later.
This woman needs a space to stay, and what a better place than the ISA household. They already got a talking cat, for fuck's sake. Seiko casually takes her in, and this nigga Gigi already back on offense. This nigga takes the lint out of Momo's hair and makes her hit the shy blush. Oh my goodness. Okarun went from Kawhi Leonard defense to D-Lo defense real quick, and this nigga Gigi got no filter as he starts mocking him in front of Momo's face. The running man is back at it. Bro jumps out the school and hit the Nika pose on a crescent moon. Mantis even subway hopping. Nothing is stopping him from seeing his lover. Did this nigga just get truck-cooned? Cut to his lover, and Momo is assisting her. And as soon as the sun starts rising, he's there like Jesus Christ. And Momo is just happy to be in the presence of two lovers. Next stop is Gigi's haunted house. Will the gang come out of it alive? Will Gigi continue to play elite offense on Momo? And will Okarun finally find his second nut? Shit, nigga. I don't know, but make sure to like the video and subscribe and hit the bell to be a part of the Noti Gang for when I drop Founded on Season 2 in minutes. Next up is Cursed House Arc, and I'll see y'all there.
今日も寝れないじゃんよ。あいつのせいで。
悪くなかった。
いいぜ。
Where we last left off, Sukuna had put out an absolute masterclass, which left Yuji feeling empty. But even though he views himself as a murderer, he must keep pushing forward, just like his sensei Nanami. Hyogo really did him dirty and burnt half his body off. He's so burnt out, he starts calling back to what he'd want to do in retirement: visit Malaysia. At the same time, he has to keep fighting in order to make sure his students are safe. So we get a beautiful illusion of Nanami fighting, and each action reflecting his mind at a state of peace, while Yuji is on his way to the station. But when he arrives, he's greeted to a terrifying sight. Turns out Mahito sent the transfigured humans towards Nanami and was watching the whole time. Yuji can't believe what he's seeing as Nanami reflects about his life as a whole. He thinks about Haibara, the man who's the reason Nanami cares so much about his students' safety. Haibara points towards Yuji, and Nanami realizes he can die happily as he says, "Ato wa tanomimasu." History had just repeated itself. Yuji failed to save another person, and worst of all, it was to the same guy. And as he shouts in anger, Mahito just mocks him. Yuji's mental state is slowly beginning to crumble yet again. Yuji's determined to get his get back, so he charges instantly towards Mahito, yet hesitates for a second when he hears the transfigured human speak. Then Mahito uses soul multiplicity and sends an earthworm at Yuji, spawns in its mouth, and sends Yuji flying. But it's all good, because he got a scar now. The fight comes to a halt for a bit as Yuji asks Mahito why he continues to mock people, and Mahito's response is to replicate himself, killing Junpei and telling Yuji, "You are me," and Yuji can't beat him until he accepts that. Yuji is tired of Mahito's yapping as they prepare to throw hands again.
Round 1, fight!
After that exchange, they both walk out and look at Yuji's face. The only thing on his mind right now is killing Mahito. Round 2 starts off with Mahito just spraying explosive bullets, and one of them happens to hit the elevator button. Then he starts using Gear 3 and tries to stomp out Yuji like he a Goomba. The elevator door opens. Yuji yeets this machine at Mahito as a distraction and hits the dipskis in the elevator. But Mahito ain't gonna let him get away that easily. He sends a gigantic fist towards Yuji, but Yuji counters by using Diversion Fist. The impact is so strong that the elevator rope snaps and the elevator starts falling down at full speed. Mahito then proceeds to just drop down and tries to kiss Yuji, but Yuji don't swing that way. He swings back at Mahito and hits him with the 1-2 hezi and jumps before Mahito can attack back. Mahito uses his earthworm again as his own elevator, sends an attack towards Yuji, which he dodges, followed by a big ass hand. Yuji breaks through it and Mahito does what he does best: run away. Oh wow, just 2 innocent humans chilling in Shibuya Station when a war is going on. What can possibly go wrong?
Hey bro, watch your jet. Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet!
Flashback.
Earlier, Mahito and Jogo set a challenge for who could find Yuji first, and along the way, they encountered some humans that Mahito added to his arsenal. He then proceeds to do a shadow clone jutsu so he can find Yuji faster.
End of flashback.
While all this is going on, my glorious Slave Queen Nobara embarks towards Shibuya Station and encounters Mahito's clone on her way there, calls Mahito a pussy, and claims he will win. Guys, I don't feel so good about this. Nobara aims her nails at the billboard, they fall, and Nobara applies another set of nails while kicking the board and lands a headshot on Mahito. It's not very effective though, and Mahito hits her with the baka, but Nobara got an ace up her sleeve. She starts charging in and uses spikes by throwing pins on the ground and activates them, catching Mahito completely off guard, and uses resonance, a move that has the power to damage souls. That's why she's the fucking GOAT. This move ends up affecting the real Mahito, which leaves him paralyzed for a bit, and Yuji takes full advantage of this opportunity.
Ready, go!
Nobara really gave Yuji the greatest lob of all time. Mahito starts running from Nobara because he's a biatch and splits off before Yuji can land another hit. Yuji chases after Mahito and notices the shadow clone. He assumes they're gonna merge back together, but little does he know, Mahito is going for the kill.
No!
Yuji kills Mahito's shadow clone, but it's already too late. We get a close-up of Nobara, and it cuts to 2009. Flashbacks in anime equals death. Nobara's flashback shows us her childhood. She's always been an adventurous woman trapped in a closed environment with no mother or father figure. She relied on building a sisterly bond with Fumi and Sayori, and as she thinks back about her life and the people she had connections with, practically all the chairs are empty except for the people she was covering with her left hand. Yuji, Megumi, Gojo, and the other Jujutsu sorcerers she met along the way. But most importantly, Fumi, her childhood friend she failed to keep her promise with. As the screen cuts back to Nobara, she tells Yuji, life wasn't so bad. And that's the end of Nobara. Gege, when I find you, bro, can't keep getting away with this shit, bro. Mahito had succeeded in breaking Yuji's resolve, as he doesn't even give Yuji time to take this in and hits a black flash and continuously pummels Yuji, clowning him for his childish resolve, thinking this was just some fantasy game. But this is war. Right before Mahito can kill Yuji, Aoi, the Chad autist Todo, saves Yuji and tries to encourage him to get up, but Yuji can't bring himself to keep going forward anymore, as he's completely lost his conviction and views himself as some useless murderer. Mahito is filled with pleasure hearing Yuji suffer, but Todo gives a speech about Jujutsu sorcerers and how they lose the privilege of living a normal life as soon as they become one. Todo, Nanami, Nobara, and Yuji all are Jujutsu sorcerers, and as long as they live, their dead comrades have not truly been defeated, as they all put their faith onto the next sorcerer to finish the job they started. And that's what keeps Jujutsu sorcerers going. This gives Yuji the motivation to keep fighting. He temporarily gets healed by Blondie, and Todo takes on Mahito by himself.
Fight!
What are you aiming at? I'm about to end this man's whole career.
NANI?!
Mahito slowly adapts to Todo and forces him to dodge a vital surprise attack, but Todo swaps with Yuji. He thinks about Nanami and claims he won't let his death be in vain, as he'll take on his share of suffering, and hits Mahito with the cleanest black flash. Bro went plus ultra, and just like that, Yuji continues to keep moving forward and teams up with Todo to take on Mahito for the last time. Yuji and Todo looking like prime Shaq and Kobe with the two-man game, as Todo catapults Yuji towards Mahito, sending them underground. Yuji tries to apply more pressure, but Mahito creates space and creates a shadow clone. How can he get jumped when there's two of him? Mahito thinking smarter, not harder. He knowing Mahito's shadow clone gets destroyed, so he uses body repel to send them even deeper underground and tries to isolate Yuji and Todo by sending a transfigured train towards them. He succeeds in taking the one with Todo, but Todo's bag runs deep. Peep game right here. Dodge rolls the first slash, parkour jumps above Mahito to hit him with a sidekick, recovers and charges back towards Mahito, catches both his blades and uses the clapping of Mahito's hand on his stomach to swap out with Mahito's left blade and kick him in the elevator.
A few moments later.
Hey yo, do you think it's beating my ass right now? Brother, I'm high shit right now. Let me cook. I bet. Kobe! I feel one for all pulsing through my veins right now. Oh my, Deku, I don't give a fuck. I'm Todo Aoi, and this is the story of how I became the world's #1 hero. I'm coming for your ass, Shigaraki. The fuck this bad nigga just call me? What kind of woman is your type? I like tall women with flat asses. Mahito takes no damage like always, but that's okay since now everyone's power is at 120%. He uses an omnidirectional body repel that makes switching useless, which sends him back over ground and tells Yuji this is the last time they'll curse each other out. Todo feels disrespected. There's no way Mahito forgot about him, so he swaps him with Yuji. Yuji goes for the decapitation kick, but Mahito decapitates himself in order to create a lifeless body clone, regenerates his main body, and then creates an attack-based transfigured human. So Todo swaps the body double with the main Mahito and takes the one with the transfigured human, but it punches him and sends him flying. Todo is that guy though, so he yeets a hanger like a boomerang behind the transfigured human, swaps with it, and one-shots it. Meanwhile, Yuji's out here fighting for his life. Mahito is sending straight earthworms, and one of them ends up breaking the Shibuya sign, but Yuji picks it up and throws it straight at the worm, and then grinds down like he shadowed the hedgehog, locks eye contact with Mahito, and goes for the high jump kick, but Mahito tosses him to the deserted Shibuya area, Sukuna cause. But luckily, Todo is there, so in order to split them up, Mahito activates his domain expansion, but last time he used it, Sukuna fucked him up, so he thinks back to seeing Gojo activating his 0.2 second domain, and says fine, I'll do it myself. Confronts Sukuna thinking he's him, but Sukuna doesn't even say a word. Mahito transfigures Todo's arm, blitzes towards him, and uses a black flash. Todo was able to survive the hit since he imbued all his curse energy to his core area, and Mahito starts charging towards Todo, but little does he know, Todo has the power of autism on his side. But now it's Yuji's turn, as Todo is out of commission, but Mahito has finally found the true essence of his soul and transforms into his true form. Yuji is shook. He goes for the punch, but it does no damage. And now Mahito's body is even tougher than Choso's was, and uses a part of his body to slash Yuji. Thankfully, just his arm was hit. They get to boxing, and Mahito is simply just outclassing him. He scrapes the skin of Yuji's mouth off and face palms him so hard it creates a huge crater in the ground. Yuji's body is reaching its limit, but so is Mahito's, and Yuji hits his leg back into place, and decides the only way to defeat Mahito is by unleashing a black flash. They both square up and the final clash begins. Yuji goes for the punch, but Mahito feels the presence of a black flash and dodges it by springing around like he Bellamy. He charges back in and they exchange blows, but Yuji catches Mahito lacking with his diversion fist, and Mahito prepares to counter. Yo, boom! It is I, Todo, the autist, not this bed boy. I alone am the honored one, and thou clap shall cleanse, thou soul. I guess this truly was our Jujutsu guys. Did he just hit me with a hezi? Never underestimate the power of left, right, good night, you bum ass. It's always Gojo the main character, Yuta Solo's LMC, and then you have the audacity to say, I'm you. But look at you, swagless and begging for forgiveness. I might be you in the way I mindlessly save my people and you kill, but what separates us at the end of the day is that I'm the main character and you're just a side villain whose sole purpose is to develop my character.
How about I take my motherfucking goddamn covenant, chase you down in the middle of the motherfucking snow? You're running. You see a bunch of us in black cloaks running towards you. You see me in a gold cloak. Big, tall, muscular, evil-ass motherfucker running at you.
For the first time in his life, Mahito had felt uneasy. He had never experienced this feeling before, but little did he know, this was fear.
The Shibuya arc is finally here. After a month-long break and 4 years of manga readers telling me this is the greatest arc of all time, me and anime-onlys alike can finally experience it. So the episode starts off with Yuji, which is a surprise, because even though he's the main character, I swear, we barely be seeing him. So the gang is just doing normal high school shit, you know, besides killing people. So Yuji's trying to go to the movies, but the movie he puts on is so disturbing. That Nobara's like, nah, and leaves my boy Yuji. Mei Mei and Todo pull up on Yoshinobu in order to recommend Maki, Panda, Yuji, Megami, and Nobara as first grade sorcerer candidates, and then proceed to play ping pong. I'm not gonna lie, Mei Mei was looking mad good this episode, but my Todo out here blabbling about how he and Yuji are the greatest duo since Kobe and Shaq. But unfortunately, Mei Mei shatters his hopes and dreams by saying he can't be assigned with Yuji since he's the one that recommended him. Now we cut back to Nobara sipping on some nice fresh boba, but she's approached by a tall imposter who's searching for Yuji. Now, would you believe me if I told you that this woman used to look like this? Probably not. I've seen tons of glow-ups in my lifetime, whether that be the fat friend who got bullied into losing weight, the ugly girl in school that turned into a fashion model, or even through means of using plastic. But I've never seen a woman go from fat and small to tall with a completely different hairstyle within less than a year. This is Yuko Ozawa. She's here to see Yuji, and yes, it's like that. So Nobara has Megumi pull up, because he's Yuji's wingman at this point, and he mentions how Yuji likes tall girls, giving Nobara and Yuko the green light to tell my man's Yuji to pull up. And when he pulls up, even though Yuko has completely changed appearance, he still realizes that it's her. We need more niggas like Yuji in this world. Sticking with a girl for her personality over looks. Special didn't even notice he's reading his own Shonen Jump magazine here. This sad music and backstory of his middle school days got me feeling down bad for bitches I've never even met before. But yeah, they go hang out, and since Yuji is a shonen MC, he's incapable of noticing when a girl likes him. They say their goodbyes, and knowing this is Jujutsu Kaisen, I wouldn't be surprised if the next time we see her, she gets packed up, since this was way too wholesome. Enough with that though. The trio is back to doing missions, but this time we're pulling up on Mechamaru, because it turns out he'd been ratting, and plot twist, he baited them to the wrong location, and instead he runs into Mahito and Geto, and as part of the deal, Mechamaru gets healed. But it's not that simple, since this is Jujutsu Kaisen, so they get to boxing right after. And shout out to Geto for respecting the one-on-one. Mechamaru just starts sending out these shadow clone mechs, and Mahito just easily bodies them, and Mechamaru escapes. Nah, psych. My boy Mechamaru just needed to change the fit real quick, cause he pulls up fitted with the Evangelion inspired mech. Peep the Gojo glaze. Fuck you mean your victory condition is Gojo? We just spent a whole arc glazing this nigga. You've seen all the film you need, plus you got the power of love. If you don't tee up and pack this man up, Mahito really got Hall of Fame Weave Master, cause I swear, he's always dodging these blasts. Just look at this.
Hi, you're on a rock floating through space. That's pretty cool, right? In the beginning, there was nothing, but then 40,000 years ago, people in modern-day Eurasia start to migrate to Japan, which becomes an island 20,000 years later. What's so important about Japan? Well, Japanese people are the only people who can become sorcerers, with like 2 exceptions. A sorcerer is a person who can utilize cursed energy and can wield it as a weapon, often in the form of a cursed technique. Cursed energy is energy produced by negative emotions, and as such, almost everybody has it, but only those sorcerer guys can utilize it effectively. Cursed energy can also manifest into curses, but don't be misinformed. Curses are not curse users. Curse users are simply evil sorcerers. So when a certain guy later is called the King of Curses, that is not him being the strongest curse, but rather the strongest curse user, or the strongest evil sorcerer. Alright, do we have that clear? Okay, sometime between the years 101 through 180, this lame old guy, Druv Lokdawala, conquers all of Japan. Is this guy important? No, but he reincarnates twice. By the way, the history of JJK that predates the actual main story is kind of loose and unconnected, so a lot of these events will be taking place hundreds of years apart and will have almost nothing to do with each other. Like how 600 years later, Tengen, an immortal being, spreads Japanese Buddhism and establishes the foundation of Jujutsu sorcery. Time Vessel Association is also founded, which is a cult dedicated to forcing Tengen to evolve, since his immortality involves switching bodies every 500 years or so in order to avoid evolving. Oh hey, now we're in the Heian era, also known as the Golden Age of Sorcery. Also, it's the era of naked people for whatever reason. These 2 guys, Michizane Sugawara and Masakado Taira, ancestors of the Gojo clan and Zenin clan respectively, are born and die, wreaking havoc on Japan upon their deaths, becoming 2 of the 3 vengeful spirits, which in JJK just means that they were strong sorcerers and are probably responsible for the strong bloodlines of the 3 main clans. This living body slash brain hopping guy, Kenjaku, is doing a little bit of scheming to merge all of Japan with the immortal being Tengen in order to force the evolution of all humans. He then promptly gets defeated by the 6 Eyes user of the time. What are the 6 Eyes? They're these super cool physical attributes that, when paired with the Limitless technique, basically make you an unkillable god. Anyways, cause Kenjaku's a fraud, Tengen merges with the Star Plasma Vessel, which prevents Kenjaku's plans because Tengen only evolves if he doesn't merge. What's the Star Plasma Vessel? Who cares? It's not really important. It just kind of means that you can merge with Tengen and you're sort of strong. This dude gay shit, Genshin, dies, and in turn becomes a special grade cursed object, the Prison Realm. At some point during the Heian era, the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, is born, and will grow to be considered the strongest sorcerer of the Heian era, and possibly of all time. Oh, also, he was supposed to be a twin, but he ate his brother while he was in the womb because he was bored, so he looks like a freak of nature with 4 arms and 4 eyes, and he's like 7 feet tall. Elsewhere, the captain of the Sun, Moon, and Star Squad is given the name Takako Uro, and is executed as a proxy for a member of the Fujiwara clan, who are basically just a bloodline that is implied to be important, but serves almost no relevance to the story. Sukuna's little stalker-ass girlfriend, Yorozu, defeats the Fujiwara clan's subjugation unit and in turn becomes accepted by them, living a life of luxury. Meanwhile, Sukuna goes to a little festival after murdering fucking everybody who was important at the time, including, but not limited to, the Fujiwara's elite Celestial Squad and the 5 Void Generals, as well as the Sugawara clan and an entity known as Angel's Team, plus the Abe clan, allowing Sukuna to earn a deity status. Yorozu falls in love with Sukuna at first sight, to which he responds with only the kindness of affection. Emperor Sotoku Tenno, ancestor of the Kamo clan, dies and becomes the 3rd vengeful spirit. Sadetsana Ashia creates the simple domain, or the domain for the weak, which really just lets you protect yourself from the actual cool domains. However, this technique ends up being largely gatekept by the big 3 clans, as well as the new Shadow School during the following centuries, in order to prevent curses from learning it. At some point during the Heian era, Sukuna passes away, but not before agreeing to live on as a cursed object with the help of Kenjaku, being turned into the first Sukuna finger. After viewing the process to get turned into a cursed object, Sukuna promptly repeats it for himself a further 20 times. At some point after he dies, Tengen gets a hold of Sukuna's corpse and plays dress up with it. Then nothing happens for about 400 years. Kenjaku, being the hater-ass bitch that he is, kills the 6 Eyes holder and the Star Plasma vessel less than a month after they were born in order to bring about his evil schemes. But somehow, a new 6 Eyes user and Star Plasma vessel emerge the day of Tengen's merger, to which Kenjaku says, "Man, fuck this shit," and seeks out the prison realm. The Gojo clan's 6 Eyes and Limitless user and the Zenin clan's 10 Shadows user fights to the death in front of their clans, with both being killed by the pinnacle of the 10 Shadows technique, the nearly untamable 8-handled sword Divergent Sila Divine General Maharaga, who may or may not be important later. Meanwhile, Kenjaku is busy forging binding vows with other sorcerers, promising to reincarnate them in a couple of centuries so long as they participate in the Culling Games. More on this later. Among these sorcerers is Hajime Kashimo, the strongest sorcerer of the Edo period, a period populated almost entirely by rice farmers. Oh, and I guess there's this guy Ishigori too, but he's not important. Kashimo agrees to be reincarnated so that he can get a chance to fight Sukuna, seeing as Sukuna will also be participating in the Culling Games. 200 years later, Kenjaku kills the leader of the Kamo clan and takes his place, performing experiments that would ruin the late Noritoshi Kamo's reputation. During these experiments, he had a cursed spirit impregnate a woman 9 times, throw those pregnancies, and mix his blood with them, creating objects known as the Death Womb paintings. These paintings are then confiscated by Jujutsu Tech and sealed for 150 years. Then, a catalyst happened. December 7th, 1989, Satoru Gojo, another 6 Eyes and Limitless user, is born. Gojo's mere existence completely shifted the balance of the Jujutsu world, resulting in stronger cursed spirits being born. A couple of months later, Suguru Geto is born, and the 2 of them would later become best friends. Riko Amane is born, and 4 years later, her parents die in a car accident. Kongshu, a handler for curse users, meets Toji Zenin. Toji later attempts to see a young Satoru Gojo, only to be spotted by him, which rocks him to his core. He promptly leaves the Zenin clan and gets married, taking the name Fushiguro for himself. On September 23rd, 2000, the most important figure in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, Aoi Todo, is born. Certified psychopath Rika Orimoto is born, along with her future husband Yuta Akatsu less than a year later. Kenjaku, in all of his wisdom, steals the body of Kaori Itadori, takes some backshots, and gets pregnant. For some reason, Jin Itadori, Kaori's husband, doesn't suspect a goddamn thing, even though it is implied that the actual Kaori has been dead for a bit prior to Kenjaku's body-stealing shenanigans. Kenjaku later gives birth to Yuji Itadori, sealing the first of Sukuna's fingers inside of him. Oh, and Jin goes missing sometime later. Megami Fushiguro is born, and his mother dies postpartum. Toji, being the stand-up dad that he is, offers to sell Megami to the Zenin clan and remarries a couple of years later before abandoning that family in order to resume a life of being an assassin. Also, that girl Rika's parents both randomly die a couple years apart, and it is implied that she had some part in their deaths. 2 sorcerers, Utsuhime and Mei, are trapped in a cursed mansion for 2 days, only to be saved by the now sophomores Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto. Gojo and Geto are then given the task of protecting the current Star Plasma vessel, Riko Amane, and escorting her to Tengen so that they can merge and renew their body. During the mission, Toji places a bounty on Amane on behalf of Kongshu and the Time Vessel Association and has her guardian kidnapped. Gojo and Geto rescue her guardian, spend a nice day at the beach and aquarium, and return to Jujutsu Tech. Gojo turns off his infinity for a whole 6 seconds, courtesy of being awake for 3 days straight, only to be jumped by Toji, revealing his true powers as a heavenly restriction user. Having a heavenly restriction basically means that you are either insanely fit and stronger than 99% of curse techniques, or you have glass bones and can use your curse energy slightly farther. Anyways, Geto flees with Riko and her maid, Gojo fucking dies, and Toji gets the most disrespectful kill in all of JJK by delivering some iron while it's hot and fresh straight into Riko's head. Oh, and her maid is dead. Geto fights Toji, only to get folded like an omelet, to which Toji calls himself a monkey who can't use Jujutsu, which Geto decides to steal and make his whole personality. Toji spares Geto, not wanting to inconvenience himself, and delivers Riko's corpse to the Time Vessel Association. Afterwards, he goes for a walk, only to discover that Satoru Gojo is not dead and is actually stronger than he has ever been before. Gojo had learned how to use reverse curse technique to heal himself while in death's grasp, utilizing the mostly unknown hollow technique Purple to finish off Toji. In his last moments, Toji asks Gojo to take care of his son before he gets sold to the Zenin clan, dying standing up like the baller that he is. Meanwhile, Geto is up wiggling Toji's worm. Upon reclaiming Riko's corpse, Gojo asks Geto if they should kill everybody in the room with them, who, mind you, were responsible for Riko's death. Geto says no, which is an action that I'm sure he will not regret later. Gojo is now officially the strongest, leaving Geto, who he was once considered equal with, in the dust. Geto meets local special grade and professional bum Yuki Tsukumo. Geto ponders how to get rid of all curses, even proposing the idea of killing all non-sorcerers, to which Yuki says, yeah. And that's what he decides to do, or I guess tries to anyways. But first, Nanami's underling, Haibara, dies, pushing Geto over the edge, which makes him decide to slaughter a village, adopting 2 twins in the process, and getting a death warrant on his head for, committing heinous crimes. Gojo goes to kill him, only for Geto to break up with him in front of a KFC. Geto takes over a Time Vessel Association facility to use as the breeding grounds for his new cult. Gojo adopts Megami, and Yuki takes the god Aoi Todo under her wing. In 2010, Gojo and Shoko graduate from Jujutsu Tech. Remember those kids, Yuta and Rika? Yeah, well, Rika fucking dies, and Yuta accidentally curses her to become this hideous curse spirit, the Queen of Curses. Meanwhile, after centuries of planning, Kenjaku finally acquires the prison realm. The strongest sorcerer in history, Miwa, gets recruited, and Nanami returns to sorcery after previously quitting. Tsumiki, Megami's stepsister, gets marked by Kenjaku while jumping off of a bridge, falling into a coma shortly afterwards. This lawyer, Hiromi Higuruma, is working on a murder case in which he knows his defendant is innocent. Rika, now haunting Yuta, kills some of his bullies, to which the Jujutsu higher-ups decide to have Yuta executed. Gojo, being the goat that he is though, intervenes. Yuta enters Jujutsu Tech and meets Maki Zenin, Toge Inumaki, and Panda. Kenjaku's kid, Yuji Itadori, enters Maji Vegas, a pachinko parlor. Inumaki and Yuta investigate a shopping center, only to get jumped by one of Geto's curse spirits, to which Gojo's freaky ass recognizes him by smelling him. Yuta then solos literally everybody at the 2017 Sister Goodwill event in Kyoto, and Geto declares war on Jujutsu Tech. On Christmas Eve, Geto releases a parade of thousands of curses as a distraction, and has this guy Miguel attempt to fight Gojo. He then goes to the school and beats the shit out of Maki, Inumaki, and Panda. Yuta fights Geto, uses curse speech somehow, and makes out with Rika for some reason, before gravely injuring Geto. Geto wanders off, only to get finished off by Gojo, who fails to get rid of his body properly. So Kenjaku steals it for himself, seeing a prime opportunity to do a little trolling later. Rika is now freed from Yuta's curse, and Yuta loses his special grade status, being a nobody with no technique now. Gojo, trying to act like he didn't murder his best friend, proclaims that Yuta is a distant relative of Michizane Sugawara, and by proxy, the Gojo clan. 3 months later, Yuta regains his special grade status as a result of summoning Rika again. Kenjaku and Uraume, Sukuna's chef from 1,000 years ago, meet with foreign governments about using sorcerers as an energy source, convincing multiple governments to send over troops to Japan in November in an attempt to harvest curse energy. And Yuji Itadori remembers he's the protagonist and graduates middle school. His grandpa becomes terminally ill and dies, willing to give him the lore drop of the century, but he ignores it. However, his grandpa's death has a profound effect on his worldview. During a freak incident that could have been avoided if Megami wasn't an awful sorcerer at the time, Yuji swallows one of Sukuna's fingers, inadvertently allowing Sukuna to reincarnate for the first time. Gojo then shows up and flexes on Sukuna. The higher-ups at Jujutsu High see this and decide to once again try to kill a kid, but Gojo postpones Yuji's execution, instead giving him a second finger and tasking him with acting as a radar to find the rest of Sukuna's fingers, although Gege kind of forgets about this thankfully. Yuji meets Nobara, and they are dispatched to a juvenile detention center, to which they are jumped by a special grade curse spirit. Losing the battle, Itadori lets Sukuna out, who then kills the special grade curse spirit, absolutely pranks Megami, taking a strange interest in him, before killing Itadori. Except Itadori is not dead either, rather Sukuna is holding him hostage in his brain until he makes a binding vow with him. What is a binding vow? A binding vow is this super cool thing where a sorcerer can sacrifice something in exchange for some benefit, and they are basically the backbone of Jujutsu sorcery. You can also break a binding vow and simply return to the state you were before you made it, but only if it's a personal binding vow and only if the benefit wasn't permanent. If you make a binding vow with another person and break it, something so dastardly happens that even Sukuna wouldn't dare to do it, although this is basically just Gege's way of not having to write it later. Anyways, Itadori and Sukuna settle on a binding vow where Sukuna can take over his body for a minute without hurting anyone, in exchange for restoring Itadori's heart. This will have zero consequences later. Gojo continues training Itadori in secret while everybody thinks he's dead, and encounters Jogo, a special grade curse spirit who is aligned with Kenjaku. Seeing a prime opportunity for a little education, Gojo teleports Itadori to him to learn about domain expansions. Jogo and Gojo have a Mog-off, to which Gojo stands proud as the honored one. However, Jogo lives on because of his ally, Hanami, who third parties them and runs off with his head. Megami and Nobara simultaneously meet the best and worst characters in the series, Todo and Mai respectively. Todo almost forces Megami to summon Mahoraga, Mai proves that she is a fraud, and ultimately they become mostly chill with each other. Gojo confronts Jujutsu Tech's principal, Gakuganji, about how he essentially forced Gojo's students into a death mission, to which he basically tells them to fuck off. So Gojo decides to pay Yuta and Miguel a visit in Africa while they're looking for more pieces of the cursed object, the Black Rope. Gojo then calls Miguel a racial slur and informs Yuta of the importance of to which he basically tells him to fuck off. So Gojo decides to pay Yuta and Miguel a visit in Africa while they're looking for more pieces of the cursed object, the Black Rope. Gojo then calls Miguel a racial slur and informs Yuta of the importance of protecting Yuji and the other first and second years when the time comes. Here is also where we learn that Miguel's technique is essentially that one kid on Instagram who breaks dances and cries, so that's pretty cool. Meanwhile, Mahito, a member of Kenjaku's little gang, decides to experiment with his powers because he is literally a baby, deciding to do so on a group of loud teenagers in a movie theater because they basically brought it upon themselves. A young boy, Junpei, sees this and decides to befriend Mahito, to which Mahito rewards him with the curse technique. Yuji and Nanami fight a bunch of transfigured humans. Nanami surprisingly holds his own against an admittedly inexperienced Mahito, and Yuji later befriends Junpei and his mother. However, Mahito coerces Junpei into killing a bully of his after framing him for the death of his mother. Junpei attempts to kill his bully, only to be interrupted by Itadori. The two scuffle, and Mahito transfigures Junpei, hoping to force Yuji into making a binding vow with Sukuna. Sukuna, however, could not care less, as he already has a binding vow with Yuji, and would much rather just laugh at Yuji's expense instead of making another, marking the true start of Sukuna's hater-ass behavior. Mahito jumps Yuji, only for Sukuna to tell him to fuck off. Nanami and Yuji jump Mahito, prompting him to learn how to use domain expansion on the spot, which doesn't really work in the end because Yuji breaks into his domain, forcing Mahito to make contact with Sukuna again, causing him to be gravely injured in the effort. Mahito then slithers away into the sewer. 2018 Sister School Goodwill event takes place, and Yuji finally rejoins his classmates, unsurprisingly traumatizing them with the sight of their dead friend. Gakuganji plots with the Kyoto students to kill Itadori, which gets interrupted by the best friendship in all of JJK between my goat Todo and Yuji. Panda beats the ever-loving shit out of Glassman over here, Maki mollywops her fraudulent sister and Miwa, and Hanami infiltrates the school. A barrier is produced, preventing only Satoru Gojo from entering it. Todo and Yuji beat the ever-loving shit out of Hanami, and Gojo breaks the barrier before giving Hanami the Toji treatment, with Mahito stealing 3 of the Death Wound paintings and 6 Sukuna fingers elsewhere. Also, they play baseball. Mahito incarnates the Death Wound paintings into Kechitsu, Eso, and Choso, who's the only one that everybody actually cares about. Yuji and Nobara murder Kechitsu and Eso, and Megami gets a rematch against a finger bearer, who is much similar to the one that they lost to in the juvenile detention center. On the verge of throwing his life away, Megami remembers a talk between him and Gojo, and uses his domain for the first time, though it's incomplete, beating the finger bearer in the process, with Itadori consuming yet another finger. Urahime informs the first years of a traitor amongst them, who turns out to be Mekamaru. They go to confront him, only to learn that he has already escaped. The real Mekamaru, meanwhile, is bargaining with our villains, who offer to cure his glass bones in exchange for betraying his closest comrades. After curing him, they try to jump him, to which an Evangelion/Gurren Lagann-esque mecha battle occurs, which is absolutely amazing, by the way. Kenjaku schemes out loud to himself about Mahito, but doesn't act upon this idea just yet, and despite fighting valiantly with the intent of warning his allies of the impending danger upon them all, Mekamaru loses his battle, prompting the
This super cute princess just summoned 3 heroes to save her kingdom, but wait a minute. There's 4 of them.
Kenjaku and his group of hooligans cast a veil around Shibuya, calling out Satoru Gojo specifically. Now, keep up with me here, as everything I'm about to list happens within the span of about 4 hours. Gojo fights Jogo, Hanami, and Choso, and kills Hanami with the power of $500 cologne. Yuji fights this locust thing, and a train full of transfigured humans arrive at Gojo's platform, with the villains thinking that Gojo would never domain expand on a bunch of civilians, to which Gojo says fuck you and expands his domain anyways, but only for 0.2 seconds out of consideration for the civilians nearby, which cripples them for 2 months instead of permanently. Ijichi, Gojo's best friend, almost dies, and Gojo gets so stressed out at the sight of his ex that he forgets to not get sealed, which means no more Gojo for the next 131 chapters. Mekamaru, who is still kind of alive, informs Yuji of Gojo's sealing, to which he becomes a crow. Mahito splits himself in 2, the Sky Haruto beats the shit out of Nobara and Nita, only to get absolutely decked by Nanami, in a moment that may or may not be responsible for JJK fans having a bad reputation. Yuji and Megami beat this guy with an ugly ass haircut, Mei meets Kenjaku and fights the smallpox deity with the help of the groomed one, this grandma accidentally brings Toji back to life, Choso fights Yuji, almost kills him, and has a crisis because Yuji is actually his brother somehow. Meanwhile, Nanami, Naobito, and Maki fight the Curse of the Sea, Dagon, only to get third-partied by the now reawakened Toji. After killing Dagon, Toji escorts his son out of the room for some father-son bonding, and Jogo seemingly kills those 3 I mentioned earlier. Except spoilers, none of them die right here because why would they? Geto's adopted daughters and Jogo feed Yuji a total of 11 more fingers, to which Sukuna kills Geto's daughters and gives Jogo a little too much off the top. Toji fights Megami and ends his own existence, content with how his son ended up. Jogo fights Sukuna, and despite putting up an absolutely legendary fight, gets cooked. Megami finally unleashes Mahoraga on this absolute nobody after edging it for 100 chapters, and Sukuna kills Mahoraga to keep Megami alive, taking a profound interest in the boy. Oh, and Shibuya is gone, kinda. Sukuna gives Yuji his body back for now, and Yuji tries to help in any way he can. Nanami promptly flies to Malaysia in front of Yuji, and Yuji and Mahito fight. Nobara fights Mahito's duplicate and promptly dies in a way that is just vague enough to where Gege can change his mind later. After receiving one of his worst beatings so far, Yuji loses his spirit, to which my glorious King Todo tells him to knock that shit off. They then proceed to beat the ever-loving shit out of Mahito. Mahito, however, decides to evolve as a result of hitting a couple black flashes, which really just means that he gets a power power up for 2 seconds before Yuji remembers he's the main character and hits him with a black flash of his own. Fun fact, by the way, Gege said that if Yuji didn't hit the black flash here, everybody would have died in an instant. Anyways, Toto sacrifices one of his arms in order to avoid being nanami'd, which means no more Toto in the plot. Just before Yuji can finish off Mahito, Kenjaku shows up in third party's Mahito, revealing that he had been waiting for him to become stronger before stealing Idol Transfiguration for himself with Geto's technique, killing Mahito in the process. Yuki shows up and everybody fights Kenjaku, except not really because Uraume's only role in the plot is to stall every time one of the important villains is in danger, but whatever. Kenjaku uses Idol Transfiguration remotely, awakening all of the people he had promised to reincarnate centuries ago into bodies that he had previously marked with cursed objects, including Megami's sister, kicking off the event known as the Culling Games. Kenjaku then promptly fucks off, teasing Itadori with the prison realm before he leaves. 10 colonies are isolated by barriers in Japan, but that's not important just yet. Remember Higuruma? Well, his client is found guilty, so Higuruma kills the judge and the prosecutor with the aid of his newly awakened curse technique. Yuta arrives in Japan, saves a little girl, and meets with the higher-ups, who announce a couple of things. Gojo is a criminal, and freeing him is illegal. Geto is back on a death warrant. Yaga, their principal, is also to be executed. And Itadori is a criminal with his execution no longer being postponed. Yuta Akatsu volunteers to be Yuji's executioner because Sukuna's domain in Shibuya cut off one of Inumaki's arms. The higher-ups still don't trust him though, so they force him to make a binding vow ensuring he will kill Itadori. The leader of the Zenin clan, Naobito, dies as a result of Jogo's onslaught, making Megami the de facto leader due to having the 10 Shadows technique, so this guy Naoya gets jealous and plots to kill him. Meanwhile, Kenjaku becomes the leader of the Kama clan once again. Upon meeting him, Yuta completely outclasses Itadori in battle even without the use of his curse technique, and promptly kills him, but only for a millisecond, as he starts his heart back up with RCT at the moment of death, fulfilling his binding vow. Meanwhile, Choso beats Naoya in combat through the power of being an older brother. Yuta saves Naoya's life on the condition that he informs the higher-ups of Itadori's death, and later reveals to Itadori that no, he isn't evil, and is actually here to protect Yuji, seeing as they both come from similar circumstances. Megami wakes up from his nap and remembers that he is allowed to be useful, before promptly asking for help with saving his sister, and heavily implying that Nobara is dead. The four of them reconvene with Yuki and Maki, and then they go to meet the now-evolved Tengen, who lore dumps on them about Kenjaku's evil plan, and informs them of the Culling Games player named Angel, who apparently can help them free Gojo. Tengen gives them the back of the prison realm, which, when paired with Angel's technique, can be used to free Gojo, but on the condition that Choso and Yuki stay to protect Tengen from Kenjaku. Also, Yaga fucking dies. Yuta informs the gang of the expelled third-year student, Hikari Kinji, who Yuta claims may be stronger than himself. Yuta then enters a Culling Game colony, and Yuji and Megami infiltrate Hikari's fight club, only for Yuji to completely sell by pretending not to know who Gojo is. Hikari still ends up agreeing to help them because Megami is the Zenin clan leader, wanting to use Megami's status to help better the Jujutsu world, which really just means that he wants to allow gambling matches to be legal. They then learn of a now reincarnated Hajime Kashimo, that one strong guy from the rice farmer era, who now has blue hair and pronouns, as he decides to add a rule to the Culling Games that allows people to search for other players because he is searching for Sukuna. They decide to seek out Kashimo's help and the help of Higuruma, who also has over 100 points, since they figure that they can convince them to give up their points to add rules that suppress the Culling Games. They want to change the rules mainly so that Megami's sister will be freed from the Culling Games. I should also probably explain what the Culling Games are, so I'm gonna do it in Fortnite terms. Kenjaku is essentially forcing 10 battle royales to happen at the same time, with a bunch of rules in place, designed to force the players to kill each other, more or less acting like the Storm. Each sorcerer who is killed is worth 5 points, as opposed to normal people who are only worth 1. Getting 100 points allows you to add a rule, so long as it doesn't prevent the operation of the Culling Games, or interfere with another rule. Meanwhile, Maki and Mai get captured by the Zenin clan, and Mai dies, which allows Maki to complete her heavenly restriction because apparently the universe considers twins to be the same person. Maki takes this in stride by slaughtering her former clan. However, Naoya, on the cusp of death, gets finished off by Maki's mother before she dies, which results in Naoya coming back as a curse. Panda and Hikari go into the Tokyo No. 2 colony to look for Kashimo, and Yuji and Megami go into Tokyo No. 1 to look for Higuruma, starting everybody else's participation in the Culling Games, as Itadori was only considered a player previously due to Sukuna's binding vow with Kenjaku when he got turned into a finger. Megami meets this guy Takaba, who essentially has the power of the cutaway gag, before having this really cool battle with this guy Reggie after being misled to believe that he was meeting Higuruma, even using a gym to mimic the effect of a complete domain expansion. After winning his fight against Reggie and his gang, Megami is discovered by Angel upon collapsing from exhaustion. Yuji finds Higuruma, who, despite only having a technique for 2 weeks at this point, has already mastered domain expansion and is working his way backwards through his technique. He initially doesn't want to help Yuji, but after a battle, and learning that Yuji is a good soul, Higuruma adds a rule allowing players to transfer points, giving Itadori 1 point so that he isn't subject to Rule 8. Higuruma then fucked off to go turn himself in for killing the people in the case he was involved in. And we turn our attention to Yuta Akatsu, who is currently dominating the Sendai colony, being labeled as second only to Gojo in terms of being an absolute baller. Yuta decimates that Druv guy from way earlier, and makes out with and kills Kurorushi, a special grade cockroach curse. After witnessing this happen, these other incarnated sorcerers, Ishiguro and Uro, decide to fight Yuta. Uro reveals that Yuta is a Fujiwara in addition to a Sugawara, showing that he has a stronger bloodline than even Gojo. Yuta manifests Rika, and we learn that she is more or less like a storage device for Yuta, storing both cursed weapons and cursed techniques. Yuta's technique is that he can copy techniques, which is pretty fucking cool if you ask me. He has to have Rika eat a part of someone to copy it first though. Back to the battle, they pop a goddamn 3-way domain expansion, which means that none of them actually fully realize their domains. Anyways, Yuta styles on all of them, claiming Ishiguro's points before we turn our attention back to Panda and Hikari. Hikari fights this dweeb Charles, who bitches and moans about how hard being a mangaka is. Panda encounters Kashimo, who blows Panda's goddamn head off and almost kills him. Panda loses 2 of his cores before Hikari intervenes, commencing my second favorite battle in the series. Despite Kashimo's immense strength, he is unable to kill Hikari, whose domain allows him to become immortal and have infinite cursed energy for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. After a bit of back and forth, a little bit of dancing, and incredible shows of battle prowess from the both of them, Hikari barely emerges as the victor. However, he determines that he would have lost to Kashimo had he used his technique, which he only didn't because it is a one-time use and he's saving it for Sukuna. Anyways, Kashimo joins the party and we get to see what Maki has been up to. Maki and Noritoshi Kamo, no not that one, this one, fight the reincarnated curse of Naoya Zenin. They initially get their shit rocked, with Maki even having to leave briefly to go heal. While Noritoshi is buying time, 2 people, Hagane Daido and Rokojushi Mio, stumble across the fight, both being incarnations of sorcerers who had previously lived for the katana and sumo wrestling respectively. Maki ponders how to ascend the heights of her heavenly restriction in order to match the skills of Toji, and discovers the secret behind it after 1,000 sumo matches within Mio's domain. Maki is now able to use her heavenly restriction to its full capabilities, and can now keep up with Naoya Zenin's sheer speed. Even after Naoya uses his domain expansion, she is freely able to move in and out of it, remaining undetected by Naoya and his domain due to her lack of curse energy. Maki ends Naoya, and is now on par with Toji in terms of strength. Itadori meets up with Megumi, Takaba, and Angel. They realize that they have enough points to save Megumi's sister through the addition of rules, and Angel informs them that she will help them free Gojo, but only on one condition. They must help her kill an incarnated sorcerer known as the Fallen, after being previously bodied by him during the Heian era. Sukuna surprisingly does Itadori a favor and points out that he is the Fallen. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the colony, those soldiers that Kenjaku had negotiated for arrive in Japan. It's revealed here that Kenjaku had all of these soldiers sent into the colonies with the express purpose of dying painful, miserable deaths, which would in turn create enough cursed energy to complete the preparations for his evil plan to merge Tengen with humanity. Back at the Tomb of the Star, Tengen and Yuki are talking about the ethics of forcing people to merge with him when Kenjaku finally strikes. Choso puts up a surprisingly good fight against his father, forcing him to reveal his third technique, anti-gravity system, which he had retained from his time as Itadori's mom. Yuki then tags in for Choso and reveals her technique to be mass. She can infinitely increase her mass with no loss of speed, allowing her to hit much harder than most. She forces Kenjaku to expand his domain, which is then dismantled by Tengen. Choso then rejoins the fight, and the two absolutely start dogging on Kenjaku, only for him to hit Yuki with a mini Uzumaki, forcing her to cast Choso out of the fight, urging him to live as a human. After a quick distraction from Tengen, Yuki increases her mass to the point of creating a black hole, which absolutely should have killed Kenjaku, but Kenjaku uses the reversal of his technique, since it was actually anti-gravity, making the reversal gravity, which through an elaborate scheme that I don't understand, allows him to survive a fucking black hole. Kenjaku then absorbs Tengen, and we get back to our main gang. After dealing with the soldiers that had previously entered Japan, Megumi adds a rule that allows a player to withdraw from the culling games so long as they have a substitute from outside of the colony and spend 100 points. Tsumiki is finally transferred to Megumi's colony with the purpose of withdrawing from the culling games, only for it to be revealed that Tsumiki is gone, replaced by the incarnation of Yorozu after being awakened by Kenjaku's idol transfiguration, who is merely masquerading as Tsumiki following her incarnation. Yorozu adds a rule to allow free entry and exit from the colonies and proclaims that she wants her first battle in 1,000 years to be against Sukuna before fleeing. While chasing her down, Sukuna seizes the moment, incanting the phrase "enchain," thus enacting the binding vow that he had made with Itadori near the start of the series. During his minute of control over Yuji's body, he forces Angel to be unconscious so that she can't extinguish him from Itadori's body, turns Itadori's finger into a cursed object, and chops it off as Yuji subconsciously didn't include himself in the "don't hurt anybody" part of his binding vow. Megumi attempts to summon Mahoraga to buy time, but Sukuna stops him, forcefully feeding him the finger. The world comes to a stop as we see that Sukuna has now transferred himself into the body of Megumi, acquiring the technique and body that he has been eyeing from the very beginning. Sukuna wastes no time absolutely bodying everybody, baiting Angel with some actual porn level acting, or getting into a scuffle with Maki and Yuji. However, Uraume comes along using their powers to stall the fight once again, informing Sukuna of the bath that they have prepared prepared, and that they need to leave at once. They do so on the back of an improved form of Nue, making fun of Itadori on their way out. The bath is revealed to be a ritual intended to sink Megami's soul into despair, aiding in breaking his will and giving Sukuna more control over his body. In order to ensure his control over Megami's body, he takes up Yorozu's offer for a fight. Yorozu wants to die at the hands of Sukuna's technique, but he refuses to use it, restricting himself to the 10 shadows so that when he does kill her, Megami will feel responsible for his sister's death. Sukuna, by the way, uses Megami's technique to more success than he ever did, and we actually get to see 9/10 of the 10 shadows, with the only exception being the tiger, but we never actually get to see that. Despite fighting her best, and even using the pinnacle of the construction technique, Yorozu is unable to defeat Sukuna, who is using the 10 shadows to nearly its fullest potential. In her final moments, Yorozu finds a strange sense of affection in Sukuna's attentiveness to her technique, gifting him with the curse tool he had used during the Heian era. Yorozu then succumbs to her wounds, and Megami gives up full control over his body. Kenjaku yaps a ton and adds 2 rules into the Culling Games. 1, no more players are allowed into the Culling Games, and 2, the Culling Games will end when everybody except for the bodies of Geto, Megami, and Uraume are dead. Despite these rules contradicting the infinite nature of the Culling Games, they are able to pass because Kenjaku learned the way of a toxic partner and threatened to end it all, in this case the Culling Games. Kenjaku then claims the original corpse of Sukuna from Tengen's crib for later use, and we cut back to the main cast. Angel says that she would be useless in a fight against Sukuna, but gives Yuta her technique off screen. Yuji and Choso have a brotherly bonding moment, and Yuji receives Yuki's documentation about souls. Shoko then mauls a little bit about Gojo, and with that we get Angel uses her technique on the back of the prison realm, but Gojo is nowhere to be seen. An earthquake happens, and we learn that Gojo emerged from the normal prison realm, which Kenjaku had placed at the bottom of the ocean, surrounded by cursed spirits. Removing the seal on the prison realm was supposed to kill him, but of course my glorious king wouldn't let something as simple as death stop him. Gojo immediately pulls up to run fades with Kenjaku, who cowers behind Sukuna. Gojo takes note of Megami's body being stolen, and rocks Uraume's ship, but both Sukuna and Gojo have business to take care of before a potential fight. So the two agree to fight on Christmas Eve, the same day that Geto had died nearly a year prior. We then get the most iconic panel in the series, and with that we prepare for Yuji consumes the rest of the Death Wound paintings, and Gojo goes to slaughter all of the higher-ups. However, beforehand, Yuta discusses the possibility of stealing Kenjaku's technique and using it to control Gojo's body in the event that he loses to Sukuna, to which Gojo agrees. The best character in all of JJK, Aoi Todo, makes his grand return, but in secret, out of fear of accidentally revealing the plan to Sukuna, since Itadori and him could possibly be linked in their memories. Todo states that he will help Yuta in his plan to take out Kenjaku, so that he may have a chance to fine-tune his new and improved curse technique, and that he will be responsible for helping the gang escape Sukuna's domain in the event that he is able to unleash it on the group following the unlikely event that Gojo dies. Meanwhile, Yuta goes to Africa to enlist Miguel's help in the event that Gojo loses to Sukuna. Uraume delivers the rest of Sukuna's fingers to him, except for one, so Sukuna eats his old head in place of it. The gang makes use of the Groomed One's technique, which was previously thought to just be plain and simple teleportation. However, it actually allows him to swap people's souls into other bodies too. Using this, they speedrun learning RCT and anti-domain techniques in order to ensure everybody's safety if worse comes to worse. Right before the fight, we get our last glimpse of everybody together, and Sukuna reveals to Uraume that Jin Itadori, Yuji's father, was Sukuna's reincarnated twin, and that Kenjaku had got with him in order to specifically ensure Yuji's strength as a vessel, meaning that Itadori was always doomed to bring about Sukuna's reincarnation. With the aid of Urahime and Gakuganji, Gojo releases an absolute nuke of a hollow purple on Sukuna and reveals that he stole Toji's fit. Thus, we begin one of the best fights in manga history. After exchanging blows, the two begin a domain clash, which Gojo loses immediately because domains are weak to attacks from the outside, and Sukuna's domain, being barrierless, crumples Gojo's domain like a paper straw in water. Normally, this would mean that Gojo should have been folded right there, but because he's Satoru Gojo, he learns how to recover his burnt out technique with the RCT on the spot. Gojo expands his domain once more, changing its conditions to allow it to guard against attacks from the outside better. However, Sukuna takes advantage of the fact that anyone Gojo touches in his domain are immune to it, turning off Malevolent Shrine's sure hit effect on the inside of Infinite Void, expanding his own domain even further to allow it to collapse Gojo's domain once more. The onlookers expect Gojo to stall for time and heal, but Gojo expands his domain once more, before promptly shrinking it to a minuscule size, using his time in the prison realm as a reference. This was done with the purpose of withstanding Sukuna's domain, but Sukuna shrunk his domain down manually, increasing the output of it, crushing Satoru's domain once more. However, this time, Gojo had accomplished what he had intended, damaging Sukuna to the point of forcing his domain to release. The two expand their domains a further 2 times, with Gojo's Infinite Void finally landing on Sukuna himself. Sukuna, however, summons Mahoraga. Bewildering absolutely everybody, it is revealed that Sukuna had actually been hit by all 5 Infinite Voids thanks to the conditions of his domain, and using Mahoraga's ability to adapt to everything, he forced Megami's soul to tank the Infinite Voids and carry the burden of adaptation for Mahoraga, allowing him to nullify Infinite Void after adapting for an accelerated 0.1 seconds. Gojo sees a flaw in Sukuna's counter to Infinite Void, that being that if he opens his domain, Sukuna will now be affected by it since Mahoraga isn't doing the bulk of the tanking for him. However, Sukuna sees through this, noticing the moment that Gojo up. By damaging his brain intentionally and then healing it with RCT, he did accomplish his short-term goal of recovering his burnt out technique, but fucked up by accidentally lobotomy maxing, giving himself brain damage and no longer being able to open his domain as a result. Sukuna proclaims his victory over Gojo and attempts to open his own domain, before realizing that he had also been lobotomy maxing courtesy of tanking a hit from Infinite Void prior to summoning Mahoraga. We are now in round 2 of the fight between the strongest sorcerer of today and the strongest sorcerer in history. The two exchange some more blows before Gojo notes that Mahoraga only needs 3 more spins of its wheel before it can adapt to infinity, which would more or less drastically push the fight into Sukuna's favor. However, my glorious king proclaims that he will kill Sukuna before he can complete those spins. Kashimo watches the fight from the Sneeko chair, waiting to bounce on Sukuna's getting a chance at fighting him. Gojo spams blue and the wheel turns 2 more times. However, Gojo has baited the fuck out of Sukuna, convincing him that he will only use blue, blasting him with the red that Sukuna thinks is trolling, only for the red to loop back around the building and finally explode, which Sukuna had failed to account for. Gojo hits Sukuna with a black flash, which knocks Sukuna out cold. However, the wheel turns once more, and Mahoraga once again grazes the battlefield while Sukuna is taking his power nap. Gojo recalls his close encounter with death courtesy of Toji, and feels a rush of exhilaration from battling an equal. Sukuna wakes up, playing defense for Mahoraga, throwing a fucking fire extinguisher at Gojo and losing 1 billion aura points in the process, before following it up with piercing blood courtesy of the water from Max Elephant. Just as Gojo thinks about how Sukuna's kinda pranking him with a 2-on-1, Sukuna makes it a 3-on-1, summoning merged beast Agito, taking Megami's totality and actually making it useful. Yuta debates intervening to alleviate some of the pressure from Gojo's shoulders, but Kashimo glazes Sukuna some more. Gojo realizes how dire of a situation he is in, vowing to take both Mahoraga and Agito out in 1 hit. Sukuna starts shitting his pants, noting that Gojo could actually still win the fight very easily with purple, begging Mahoraga to be useful. Unfortunately, Mahoraga listens, turning the wheel once more, instantly cutting off Gojo's arm, and showing Sukuna an easier way to get through infinity than the one he had previously used. With both of them realizing that now is the time to strike, Gojo hits Agito with a second black flash before crushing him with a max output blue. His second black flash restores his RCT output, reinvigorating him for the last stretch of the fight. He hits 2 more black flashes on Mahoraga and promptly fires a red towards the blue that had killed Agito. Sukuna cries out for help, knowing that he is on the verge of losing. Mahoraga goes to prevent the blue from colliding with red. However, Gojo takes advantage of the fact that Mahoraga had adapted to blue, using blue's energy to propel himself towards Mahoraga, knocking it out of the way. Sukuna fires piercing blood towards red to make it explode prematurely, but Gojo reinforces his blue with incantations to make it swallow it before it makes contact. At last, Gojo unleashes a hollow purple, complete with incantations and no selected target, including himself in the blast radius, instantly disintegrating Mahoraga and mortally wounding the King of Curses with a 200% output hollow purple. Gojo has won.
Yes! 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 No! No! No!
In one beautiful last moment, we get to see Gojo proclaiming his enjoyment of his final battle, his regret that he couldn't get Sukuna to use his ace up his sleeve, and the last time we will see Gojo interact with his closest friends and comrades. Oh, and I guess Toji's bum ass is there too. This beautiful moment is then interrupted by the hard reality that the strongest is dead, having been killed by Sukuna, who had used Mahoraga's second adaptation as a blueprint for his own technique, cutting through Gojo's infinity using a dismantle that targeted not only Gojo, but space, and the entire world itself surrounding him. Sukuna, utilizing a binding vow that altered the conditions needed to perform this world bisecting slash, was able to cut Gojo in half in spite of a missing arm. Gojo dies with a slight smirk on his face, and with that, the strongest reaches his end. With no time to waste, Kashimo instantly launches on the battlefield, prepared for the battle he has waited 4 centuries for. Uraume attempts to stall the battlefield once again, to which my goat Hakari promptly tells him to fuck off, before the two begin a battle that will barely be seen by the audience over the next 30 or so chapters. From the iceberg that Uraume had launched onto the battlefield from, comes a curse tool that Sukuna had used back in the Heian era, gifted to him by the late Yorozu, which, as luck would have it, is ineffective against Kashimo. Kashimo finally uses his one-use technique, Mythic Beast Amber, which allows him to use any phenomena that can be created by electricity, so long as he does it before his technique concludes, which would kill him. After landing some good hits on Sukuna, the King of Curses is forced to use the one method of healing that he had been holding off on, fully reincarnating in all of his four-armed glory. Kashimo glazes Sukuna one last time, before being killed so hard that we literally never get to see his body. Meanwhile, Kenjaku is dealing with the remaining Culling Games players, before witnessing the death of Gojo on his phone. Kenjaku tells one of these players how he's shitting his pants hiding from Yuta, before the god of all comedy, Takaba, shows up to do a little bit of trolling with Kenjaku. Kenjaku destroys Takaba's confidence, before Takaba regains it, and starts a stand-up routine with Kenjaku, forcing him to play along. The two of them engage in one of the funniest fights in the series, throwing every single ball to the wall in a battlefield with absurdist humor humor and references that I don't fully understand courtesy of being a straight white man. After the two become a successful stand-up duo, Takaba is able to rest, feeling completely fulfilled by the art form that is comedy. Kenjaku applauds the god of comedy before being struck down by Yuta with the help of Todo's technique. In one last act of trolling, Kenjaku transfers the authority to begin the merger to Sukuna, giving him the absorbed Tengen. Yuta finishes off Kenjaku, destroys the rest of his cursed spirits, has Rika consume him, before heading back to the battle with Sukuna. While Yuta was busy standing on business, Yuji and Higuruma show up in the wake of the lightning god's death, intent on getting Sukuna's curse technique taken away and getting Sukuna a death sentence through a retrial within Higuruma's domain. Sukuna says fuck it we ball, curious about the effects of the executioner's sword, with Sukuna's sentence being confiscation and the death penalty. Except the thing that was confiscated was not Sukuna's technique, but rather the cursed object he obtained at the beginning of the fight. The other sorcerers launch onto the battle, unaware of this fact, and promptly get hit by a flurry of dismantles. Kusakabe protects Higuruma with the simple domain, and Choso stands on business as always, only to promptly get donutted. We learn that Nanami was turned into a marketable plushie upon his death, so we get to see a little bit of his technique being wielded by Ino, his fraudulent ass student. Sukuna glazes Higuruma a little bit, and hits him with a world bisecting slash, which he tanks and heals from, attempting to end Sukuna's life with the executioner's sword, only for it to be revealed that Sukuna had already cut off his own hand in order to avoid the death penalty. Higuruma gets hit by a cleave while buying time for Yuji, and seemingly passes away before the executioner's sword can fulfill its role. We learn here that the groomed one is teleporting onto the battlefield to take the fallen party members to Shoko. Yuji tries to mollywop Sukuna, demonstrating that the body swapping shenanigans were indeed effective in helping him learn RCT. But that doesn't matter right now, as Sukuna spaces out, being bored after Gojo's death. He gets so bored in fact that he reevaluates his ideals before deciding that he was correct all along, and that now he wants to kill Itadori just for funsies, I guess. Sukuna receives Kenjaku's parting gift of Tengen, declaring that he will kill everybody and then fight the merger. By the way, for those of you who think that the merger was set up and not paid off, no. The merger would have, again, required Sukuna to win against everybody and to kill all of Japan. Chill. The true main character of JJK, Yuta Akatsu, shows up, intent on settling the fight here and now. Sukuna tries to rizz up an actual 11-year-old, and we get to see Yuta's domain in all of its glory. Yuji and Yuta absolutely dog on Sukuna, with Yuta hinting that he consumed the last of Sukuna's fingers in order to gain his technique. Yuji is also able to use blood manipulation now, courtesy of consuming the death wound paintings. Sukuna is hit by Jacob's ladder, and their plan is going perfectly, being nearly foolproof. That is, until Megami's fraudulent bum ass decides, no, which allows Sukuna to hit a world bisecting slash on Yuta. And with that, it seems that Yuta's domain collapses on itself, which was really just a front for Maki to stealth attack Sukuna. Yuta is teleported out of the fight, and we get to witness the peak of heavenly restrictions versus the peak of sorcery. Maki is able to damage Sukuna's soul thanks to her special pair of eyes, forcing Sukuna to manually pump his own blood using curse energy. Yuji is forced to have a bonding moment with Choso, courtesy of the fact that he's dying. Maki and Sukuna proceed to have one of the coolest fights in the series in spite of its brevity, with Maki being able to see Sukuna's technique courtesy of her awakening at the end of the Naoya fight. We get a glimpse at Hikari versus Uraume again, with them weirdly enough having a 2-set this time around, but Uraume just glazes up Sukuna a little more. Sukuna lands a black flash on Maki, knocking her out of the fight for now, leaving the fight up to Kusakabe, who actually does a surprising number on the King of Curses before being off-screen in the funniest way possible. The groomed one comes to rescue Kusakabe, but nearly gets one-pumped by Sukuna. However, he is saved at the last second by Miguel and his friend Larue, making good on their promise to Yuta earlier. Larue uses his technique to restrain Sukuna, and Miguel breakdances to avoid Sukuna's barrage of dismantles. What? Miguel actually beats the shit out of Sukuna, and Choso, Yuji, and Maki rejoin the fight. Maki cuts Sukuna's left arms off, preventing him from firing off a world bisecting slash thanks to his lack of RCT and the binding vow he made to kill Gojo. Sukuna hits his second black flash, and we get to see the return of Jump Kaisen, before Sukuna lands 2 more black flashes on Maki and Choso respectively. Yuji fires off Piercing Blood properly for the first time, and promptly hits a black flash himself, starting the process of his own awakening. Yuji is now able to use a more modern version of Sukuna's shrine technique thanks to his heritage and awakening, landing a further 6 black flashes in a row, absolutely destroying Nanami's record. Sukuna starts shitting himself, as his golden opportunity to regenerate his RCT through achieving 4 black flashes was taken away by Itadori's own black flashes. However, despite being hindered by Yuji's awakening, Sukuna was still able to accomplish a monumental feat. Through a combination of the black flashes that he had hit, and the small part of his brain that was unaffected by Infinite Void, as well as stealing Gojo's hand sign, Sukuna was able to unleash an incomplete Malevolent Shrine for 99 more seconds. The group bears it through a mix of RCT and Simple Domain, and just when everybody thinks they're in the clear, Sukuna unleashes his flames again, the ultimate attack up his sleeve that he was unable to unleash against Satoru Gojo due to all of the domain altering shenanigans. We get another glimpse of Hikari versus Uraume just so that Uraume can glaze Sukuna a little more. Under the conditions of his domain, Furnace would kill everybody, acting essentially as a nuke, which is what he had used to kill Mahoraga in Shibuya. However, Choso, in one final act of brotherly love, creates a blood shield around himself and Yuji, sacrificing himself for the sake of his little brother. When the ashes start to settle, Yuji believes that there there is nobody left, only for the man, the myth, the legend, Aoi Todo to return, having saved everybody from the domain with the use of his new technique, Re-Boogie Woogie, which is able to swap people's positions up to 50 times in a second through the use of a Vibra Slap, which, by the way, Gege has no clue how a Vibra Slap works. Unfortunately though, Choso and Yuji were out of Todo's range. Thus, the best duo in JJK begins dog-walking Sukuna, throwing him on a one-way train straight to getting his ass beat. During the roulette wheel of Boogie Woogies, Sukuna tries to predict a swap, only to get baited by Todo's 530,000 IQ, pump faking the King of Curses 3 times in a row. Yuji lands a Black Flash, reaching to crush Sukuna's heart, only for Sukuna to attempt to expand his domain once more. However, before casting his domain fully, a pair of unmistakable eyes catches his attention from the smoke surrounding them. The eyes of the strongest, now wielded by Yuta Akatsu. Sukuna becomes absolutely giddy at the sight of his Pookie, tossing Itadori aside, proclaiming his newfound respect for Yuta, before the two of them expand their domains once more. Yuta utilizes a smaller domain in order to withstand Malevolent Shrine, hoping to crush Sukuna within his domain. By the way, Gege got sick in the middle of this fight, presumably from having to draw Gojo for 4 panels, so we got left on a month-long hiatus that would make Hunter x Hunter fans jealous. Anyways, we return a month later with Yuta barely being able to control the Limitless technique even with the 6 eyes. Despite convincing Sukuna that he was losing, Yuta uses a blue to reveal an iPod with Inumaki's curse technique inscribed on it, forcing Sukuna to remain still and eat a hollow purple. The two of their domains collapse, and the trio of Yuji, Todo, and Yuta prepare to jump Sukuna, but Yuta kinda has to take a nap since his copy technique is burnt out. So the remaining two start dogpiling on him once more, with Itadori prying Sukuna off of Megami's body with the use of dismantles targeted precisely at the barrier between their souls. Sukuna vomits some of his fingers up, eating them afterwards like a dog, before it is revealed that Hana and Angel are lingering nearby, firing off one last Jacob's Ladder, attempting to finally put an end to the King of Curses. However, Sukuna acquires the powers of the 4th wall, and reading that the technique has ladder in its name, decides, nah, I'd climb. He ascends to the heavens in an attempt to kill Angel for good, with Todo tanking a second Black Flash from Sukuna, which decommissions the two of them from the fight. Not realizing that Yuji ascended the Jacob's Ladder with him, he is caught off guard, being thrown for a bit of a loop. Before utilizing that second Black Flash that he had hit in order to recover his RTT. Sukuna becomes cocky before being absolutely gobsmacked by the sight of Yuji unleashing his domain for the first time. Yuji's domain is an incredibly unconventional one, seeming reminiscent of many of the interactions that Sukuna and Yuji have had during their opponent's last moments. Yuji takes Sukuna on a walk through his domain, showing him his hometown and attempting Sukuna to feel even the slightest bit of sympathy for a person. But once Sukuna realizes that he is being pitied, the fight almost resumes before Megami interrupts, pleading his case as to why he refused Itadori's help earlier. Itadori sees eye to eye with him, relating Megami's feelings of helplessness to those of his grandpa's, and with this follows his final clash with the King of Curses. After one last plea for Megami, he decides to help from inside Sukuna's body, allowing Yuji to get the upper hand. Sukuna steals Gojo's bag one last time and refreshes his technique in order to counter Yuji's domain. Yet, upon destroying Yuji's gauntlets, Sukuna realizes that Yuta had merely been bluffing when he had stated that he had ate the last finger, having instead consumed Yuji's ring finger. Meanwhile, Sukuna's actual last finger sits in an undisclosed location, with none other than a freshly awakened Nobara ready to use resonance on the finger in the nick of time, crushing Sukuna's hopes of a last-ditch domain. How is she alive after having no heartbeat and a hole in her head? I don't know, but honestly I'm just kinda glad to see her back. Sukuna, now spitting up his fingers, attempts to injure Itadori enough to close his domain, but thanks to a well-timed Divergent Fist and Black Flash, Itadori is able to bring an end to Sukuna's time in Megami's body. Sukuna attempts to gaslight his way into remaining in control, but Megami, having been reawakened by Yuji, is able to expel the curse from his body. Sukuna, now a hideous mass, tries desperately to cling onto Megami for control, but since he is no longer attached to a host, he rapidly loses his size, being confronted by Itadori, who once again gives him one last chance to live. Sukuna, however, being a true hater to the end, rejects Yuji's helping hand, calling him by his name for the first time, before crumbling away, declaring himself a curse in much the same way that Jogo declared himself a human. Meanwhile, we cut back to Hakari and Uraume, who are somehow still fighting. After acknowledging Sukuna's death, Uraume glazes Sukuna one last time before offing themselves, which is kinda toxic when you remember that it is in their body.
This is too easy!
Sometime later, Megumi wakes up presumably from the effects of being hit by 5 infinite voids and having his body stolen, with some admittedly really cool scars. Yuji and Nobara join him, with Yuji giving the two of them letters from Gojo, containing information regarding their parents, which they reject and laugh at respectively. Yuji gathers Nobara and Megumi before going to see Yuta, who, despite all odds, is back in his original body with 0 consequences. Rika had actually been preparing Yuta's body for his safe return, so I guess all is well in that department. They debate whether or not they could have won with an easier method, which really doesn't matter because Higuruma is fucking alive, courtesy of Sukuna just playing around. They then have a post-game analysis for the sake of people who read JJK exclusively through TikTok, showing how important it was that their plan went the way it unfolded. The Groomed One rightfully glazes himself as the MVP, as let's be honest, everybody would have died without him. And Mei explains how and why she got rid of the Binding Vow to give everybody access to Simple Domain. Spoiler alert, the new Shadow School leader was sapping the life force of the students who were taught Simple Domain, all while holding a monopoly on the Simple Domain, since the only way to learn it was through the Shadow School or through one of the big 3 clans. Why wasn't this discussed like 30 chapters ago when they explained Wiwi's technique? I don't know, but I guess somebody was probably waiting for this. Megumi goes to visit Sumiki's grave with Shoko, who not only stole Tea and Getsu's haircut, but also prepared Sumiki's body for an extended stay underground. She also quits smoking here after picking the habit back up in Shibuya. Gakuganji and Urahime discuss how Japan is safe so long as Sukuna's corpse is preserved, which is kinda hilarious. Noritoshi Kamo and his family are safe after previously leaving Japan out of fear of Sukuna, which I may or may not have forgotten to mention earlier. Maki sets Daido and Mio up for a comfortable and long life in Tokyo, so that they'll be safe from the current rounding up and deincarnating of culling game sorcerers courtesy of Hana and her technique. She also just casually throws in a line about the culling games being ended, which, how? I guess probably by taking down the barriers that were set up over the last 1,000 years by Kenjaku. But Gege, please, this is the one time you should explain something. Meanwhile, Charles is still bitching about how hard being a mangaka is, and Takaba is performing stand-up again with a familiar face. Amai attempts to apologize to a girl that he had bullied once, only for her to run away courtesy of his League of Legends aura. Higuruma gets off on all charges and becomes a full-time sorcerer, and Hana assumes that Megumi is flirting with her when he apologizes for, you know, Sukuna tearing her arm off in his body. And at last, we get to watch our trio go on one final mission. This dude, Fukuzawa Sota, has big-ass bug eyes courtesy of someone's curse technique. But he isn't the one being cursed. It's actually his wife, as the main gang see her husband the way he normally looks. They determine that this is the work of a curse user, so they have the couple go in an elevator in order to get out of his range, so they can confirm the curse user's location. As soon as the couple exits his range, our main trio jumps him. The trio makes light work of the dude, who admittedly has a really bad curse technique. After being caught, he proceeds to go on an incel rant about spending money on women. Yuji then thinks back to a conversation he had with Gojo, where Gojo had proclaimed his hopes for Yuji and his peers, one day surpassing him in terms of strength, and one day having someone develop said strength through means that are different to his own. Yuji gives the stalker incel a second chance before telling the gang that he had thrown away the last Sukuna finger. Speaking of Sukuna, we get one last glimpse of him interacting with Mahito in some sort of soul limbo. Mahito calls out Sukuna for living out of revenge rather than out of his own accord, and while Sukuna disagrees at first, he acknowledges his own failings in life, even hinting that his selfish ideals may have come from as early as his time in the womb with his brother, and as late as when everybody jumped him in the Heian era, being produced mostly from a place of self-preservation. And in spite of his previous dedication to strength at the cost of everything else, Sukuna tells Mahito that, if given another chance, he would like to try a different path, before walking off, comforting Uraume, revealing an almost father-child dynamic between the two that we hadn't really gotten a glimpse into before. Mahito curses Sukuna for turning away from his hatred, but Sukuna simply replies, obviously, I lost after all. And it makes sense. Why would the King of Curses repeat the same path that caused his demise in the first place? Even if he wouldn't admit it to Yuji, self-proclaimed curse may have had more humanity in him than he had let on. We get one last glimpse at our main gang, before panning to the very last page of the manga, with the last Sukuna finger being housed in its original location from the very start of the series. And with that, we have the end of JJK. And while there have been talks of sequels and missed potential and all that sort of shit, JJK is still currently my favorite anime and manga series. Was the ending the absolute best it could have been? No, but it doesn't need to be, as quite frankly, I still think it's very good as a whole. If you find yourself being unsatisfied with JJK's ending, I'd highly encourage you to at least reread from the start of the Sukuna fight, as reading it as a whole rather than on the weekly chapter release basis that we had initially been given allows us to get a more complete picture of the story that Gege was going for, and as such, I think it results in a far more pleasant reading experience. And while I don't think it's wrong to say that the ending does feel a little rushed, especially with it being announced only a month prior to the actual ending releasing, the complete work of JJK has some of my favorite moments, action, and characters that I've had the pleasure of viewing in recent times. So whether you enjoyed it or not is up to you, but personally, I had a lot of fun. Thank you, Gege, for creating peak fiction on occasion, and may everybody who read JJK through TikTok and called it trash, or people who leaked and spoiled it for clout, all of them, I hope they all are forced to consume every drink they'll ever consume through a paper straw. But remember, this truly was our Jujutsu Kaisen, and you are my special.
The ending of Eva, Aizen's reveal, the Super Saiyan 1 transformation, One Piece's Gear 5, and Naruto confronting Pain. There are moments for me in all shows that make certain series great, and I think the end of this battle is another one of those. Everything we thought we understood about the series is ultimately flipped on its head throughout this fight here. So, it's time. Today we are diving back into Jujutsu Kaisen and the most recent complete section of the story. More specifically, the decisive Gojo vs Sukuna battle in the uninhabited, demon-infested district of Shinjuku. Well, I guess I need to kind of take everything back to the exact moment where the fight kicked off, and of course massive manga spoilers for anyone who's an anime only and happened to stumble across this fight. Anywho's, as all of these sorcerers were lacking out discussing how to give Gojo a boost of confidence, as it's the first time they've ever really needed to do so, Gojo himself, accompanied by Gramps and Utahime, all with looks of determination, then roll up and get ready for battle. With everyone around feeling his aura, Yuji greets his sensei wholeheartedly and lets him know that he can't even get close because his technique's in the way. Gojo is slightly surprised by this, but after a moment ends up laughing while telling his boy to give it to him, causing Yuji to jump up and slap his sensei on the back. Then, following on the same path, every other sorcerer patted Gojo on the back as he rolled through the group on his way to the battlefield. Walking through a skyscraper with Gojo now, Ajichi notes that it feels like ages since he was last here, yet, in reality, it's only been just over a month now. Wanting to know what the realm felt like, Gojo explains to him that the prison realm was like when you're mad busy with work that it flashes in a week. However, the feeling's so draining that you'd never want to experience it again. After a few moments, Gojo inquires about the people in the basement of Shibuya's metro station, where all of that chaos had started back in the Shibuya incident arc. If, we're being specific, that's where Gojo came across Choso, Hanami, and Joko, and they tried, teaming up on him and whatnot. Even though Gojo only fought them for a very short period of time, it left remnants of Gojo's cursed energy that made cursed spirits avoid the entire floor. Which is actually insane when you think about it. This man is so strong, his residuals managed to scare off cursed spirits, which is, I still can't fathom it. I don't think anyone else is on this level. Ajichi also reveals that the people who were affected by a 0.2 second domain are all fine, and those who were affected return to normal. Walking up behind Gramps and Utahime now atop the roof, Gojo and Ajichi arrive as the Day of Reckoning has begun. Elsewhere, a roommate asks what time the fight is going to take place, to which Sukuna reveals that they didn't really specify a time, but as he says that, he's able to feel Gojo's aura emanating in his direction. Back in the hallway, and just moments before they made it up to the roof, Ajichi confronted Gojo on why he always wanted him to construct the barriers for him. Turning back and looking at his close friend, Gojo tells him that it's because he trusts him more than anyone else. Now, atop the roof and slamming his hands onto the ground in preparation for his barrier, Ajichi just thinks on how he's someone who's always fled. No, someone who didn't even have the courage to flee and was given the courage to run by a friend. Despite everything, Ajichi braces himself and knows that he must live up to Gojo's expectations, either that or die trying. In front of the two, and while using her curse technique called Solo Forbidden Arena, it's explained that any sorcerer of her choosing, including Utahime herself, will have their curse energy reserves and output temporarily enhanced as long as they remain within range. To excel at Jujutsu is to excel at subtraction. The degree to which a sorcerer can emit cadence, movement, and other elements that relate to their curse technique determines their skill, and Utahime leaves nothing out. Words, gestures, dance, music, elevating a simple technique to that of a ritual boosts its effectiveness by 120%. Utahime's curse technique allows her to boost the chosen sorcerer's curse energy, and as Gojo himself also began chanting to add to his own technique, 9 ropes, polarized light, crow, and declaration between front and back, it's revealed that just like our girl, Gojo has also never left anything out, and with the combination of the trio's curse energy, he shoots forth his 200% hollow purple. As Gojo's ability blasts forth, Sukuna manages to take notice of it and throws up his hands trying to block the entire attack. With the buildings all around him exploding due to hollow purple, Sukuna's defenses are undoubtedly breached as the building he was standing on is completely demolished, causing it to fall to the ground below. Urame, who was next to Sukuna at the time of the attack, has also not been seen since this moment. So correct me if I'm wrong on that or anything, but after this moment she's seemingly vanished from reality. So she's either gone or she sneaked off, managing to survive that attack, probably healing up somewhere. Either way, as the smoke slowly fades, it's made evident that due to Ichichi's barrier, Sukuna actually misread Gojo's first move. Even though he knew where he was, he didn't sense the insane curse energy output until the last moment. Bursting through the smoke, Sukuna, with one less hand, somehow managed to tank the first attack, leaving the true battle between history and today's strongest sorcerers to continue. So, skipping back just before the blast, Sukuna and Urame were located at the Shinjuku Center, which is around 4 to 5 kilometers away from the Shibuya building Gojo was currently on with his team. Having strolled or probably just teleported across that distance in a matter of moments, Gojo sets the record straight and tells the King of Curses that he's the challenger here. The challenger though, Sukuna standing there finds it utterly pathetic that Gojo would state that after landing a surprise attack. In his eyes, and as he brings his hands together, Gojo is no more than a fish atop his chopping board, one slightly fresher, but still a nameless fish. Flaring up his curse energy, Sukuna just remarks that it's time he starts peeling back Gojo's scales. Gojo asks him why he's still wearing that face, and guesses that Sukuna's original thought was to steal Megami's body so he'd hold back during the fight. Unfortunately for him, our man's been through a specific set of training that allows him to go all out on anyone who resembles any sort of resemblance to the great Toji Fushiguro. Considering that Gojo himself trained Megami, he probably knows exactly how many hits his student could take before he dies, and given that Sukuna had survived death while possessing Yuji's body, Gojo thought it would be prudent to only start worrying about Megami's welfare after he kills the person in control. Initiating the conflict, the duo dart at each other, both just narrowly dodging each successive strike. Dropping to the floor just out of range of Sukuna, Gojo flicks out his hand straight into his opponent's nuts, sending them shooting into the side of a nearby building, and out the other side crashing into some stairs behind it. Getting up, he's instantly harassed by Gojo, who, stomping in his direction, proceeds to kick him in the gut so he's perfectly placed in the middle of an overpass bridge platform. Continuing to stomp down, Gojo collapses the platform Sukuna was on, making his footing extremely unstable. Taking the opportunity to catch him off guard, Gojo activates his infinity and levitates the bridge into the sky, before tossing it directly at a large skyscraper. Resisting the force of the platform, Sukuna uses Dismantle, or what I assume to be Dismantle, to cause the structure to collapse. Then, making it over to a nearby roof in the flash of an eye, Sukuna pulls up his hand and sends a massive slice using Dismantle to cut the building directly behind Gojo in half. With our man turning around to look at it, Sukuna quickly rushes him, throwing a fat right hook that catches Gojo off guard. However, as the punch connects with his infinity, he decides to deactivate his technique in order to physically take Sukuna inside of the collapsing structure. Following him up the hallway, Gojo quickly opens a door for a moment that blinds the two from seeing exactly what ability they're about to throw at each other. Catching them both off guard though, the building crashes into the ground below, bringing a previously intense fight to a brief pause. Walking out of the debris while all of the smoke slowly starts to disperse, Gojo jokes that, well, he's just gonna pin all of this destruction on Sukuna once he gets out of here. Sukuna though points out that he really can't say anything, quickly making Gojo realize that Mei-Mei's actually streaming this entire fight to the world. When it comes down to Gojo's limitless technique, it allows him to be completely untouchable. To get around this, and in a similar way to what Hanami and Jogo did, Sukuna is using domain amplification to neutralize his curse technique. Confused slightly on what domain amplification is, Yuta explains to everyone while they watch the fight that he saw something similar in Mikamaru's footage. He pretty much said what I exactly said before about Jogo and Hanami using domain amplification to nullify Gojo's technique and everything. Hikari points out that it does seem like Gojo's domain has been neutralized, but he's still confused how. The old G, Kusakabe, lets them all know that it's more of a refined version of a simple domain. If one sheaths themselves in a domain without imbuing your own curse technique, you allow the opponent's technique to flow into that empty space, thereby neutralizing it. Angel points out that the main drawback to domain amplifications is that you can't simultaneously use your own innate technique. No one, not even Sukuna, is an exception to this rule. So, in her eyes, if Sukuna has another way to deal with Limitless other than Domain Amp, then Gojo will 100% lose. Confused on why they don't just use the domain expansion, Miba inquires as to why. She knows that immediately following the domain, one's technique becomes unstable. So it would make sense for Sukuna to challenge a domain first. Karara notes that it is easy to say that, but depending on the outcome,
friendly Italian restaurant with outdoor seating nearby. And text it to Luca.
Find it real quick. Send it to the click. This is sick.
Of that domain battle, the fight would be over, which in both of the girls' eyes is the correct battle strategy. Yuji though, having been told something by Gojo, reveals that he's pretty sure the domain's short-hit effect negates Gojo's technique to begin with. Perking up, Wee Wee wonders if it's because Sukuna doesn't think he can win in a domain expansion against Gojo. Still, Shoko points out that, yeah, you are right, but Gojo probably would have opened one if that was the case, so she finds it hard to believe that Gojo wouldn't be able to foresee that as well. Standing there, Choso ponders the question of what would happen if Gojo's domain did clash, as from what he was told, Sukuna's domain is a barrierless domain. Hearing this bizarre statement, everyone just reacts in shock, unable to believe that his domain doesn't even have a barrier. As an example of just how impossible this is, Kusakabe asks Miwa to toss him that water. However, after she gives him the bottle, he throws it back, telling her to give him the water, not the bottle. Confused, Miwa just facials the absolute hell out of Kusakabe, while in behind them, Mei-san explains that expanding a domain without a barrier is like trying to hold water without a bottle. With no container, can you even accumulate water? Can you paint on thin air without a canvas? With no stem, root or leaves, can a flower bloom from a seed? Maki compares it to using software without even having a PC to run anything on. It's frankly unfathomable in their eyes, it's completely impossible. Even still, she notes that Megumi's domain was never enclosed within a barrier, and having heard that before Megumi was given his grade promotion, Kusakabe explained that to use it, he actually had to use an existing structure to enclose his domain. Noritoshi Keimo, or as we know him now, Godou Kenjaku, was able to pull it off by himself, so it does prove that it can happen. Choso, who actually fought during that battle, pointed out that they'd prepared to use a simple domain on Kenjaku while Tengen dismantled his domain from the outside. However, because of the barrierless domain, it was the simple domain that was torn apart. Miwa, who's confused over what exactly would clash in this attack, states that the short-hit effect is imbued within the barrier itself, so it can only clash with another barrier. She also realizes that, well, everyone's talking as if their domains are a given, but domains devour an insane amount of curse energy, so wouldn't avoiding using them make sense? Inumaki speaks up and notes that, well, it doesn't really matter since Gojo has an infinite amount of curse energy. Ino knows that fact isn't actually true, and it's just due to how he's skilled at using his specific technique. If his curse energy consumption rate ends up being less than what he actually replenishes, then it could technically run out. That's just working under the assumption though that he's using it like normal. If he changes things up and starts using domains consecutively, then that could be a completely different story. Not having even mentioned what Sukuna is actually capable of as well in fighting, Kashimo speaks up to state that the sharpness of his technique's activation is unparalleled. The way he can switch things up in a matter of milliseconds from innate techniques to domain amplifications is utterly amazing. If Gojo literally wasn't who he is, then Sukuna would comfortably be winning in terms of curse energy utilization. What's more, his total curse energy output is probably even more than Yuta's. From what he can physically tell, he'd say it's probably double the amount that he actually has. Momo, who's been pretty quiet this entire chat, speaks up and feels that maybe nobody, not even them, knows how this is going to play out. If Gojo and Sukuna's domains do clash, who knows what could possibly happen? Then, right on that exact moment, and after all of this insane build-up that we just went through, Higuruma signaled that they are about to begin the domain clashes. Back in Shinjuku, both Sukuna and Gojo throw up their respective hand signs to simultaneously open the Infinite Void and Malevolent Shrine. With Sukuna now appearing above his shrine and Gojo standing a few feet back, it's explained that the two are evenly matched. They form a perfect pair within Gojo's barrier, which in turn meant that both guaranteed hits overlapped each other, then cancelled themselves out. In this battle, and as the two expand their domains, should either one of them sustain severe damage, it will cause the collapse of their domain, and the other one's sure hit will immediately take effect. Back at the TV room, Kusakabe and Mei both react in shock as somehow, even with their domains active, they're still evenly matched. In Shinjuku, the pure force of the two overlapping domains caused the surrounding area to start getting atomized. Sadly for Gojo, the effective range of Sukuna's domain reaches even beyond that of a barrier, and just as Yuji notes that a domain expansion is weak from the outside, Gojo's domain cracks and shatters as it's shown that below it, Sukuna's domain now sits perfectly fine. With no protection against Sukuna's sure hit technique, the effect immediately flies forth and seemingly cuts down the strongest sorcerer of today. Having taken the slash to the neck, Gojo nonchalantly activates his reverse curse technique, which everyone back at the lair reacts to. Higuruma states that as long as Gojo stays in range, the slashes will never stop coming. Choso, who assumes escaping is probably the port of call for Gojo, is backed up by Hikari, who somewhat agreed with him. However, it's more that Hikari assumes Gojo will make a dash for the exit, whereas Kusakabe realizes that teleporting is out of the question, since it's an application of the Limitless technique. Due to the use of his domain expansion and it being destroyed, it's plausible that for a moment he can't use his curse technique, which, like they state, means he's in store for one hell of a beatdown. Back inside of Sukuna's domain expansion, Gojo is relentlessly slashed over and over again by the sure hit effect of the domain. Somehow though, Gojo manages to calm himself as he knows for a fact that when it comes down to techniques, Limitless is far better. Having been able to consistently overpower Sukuna's sure hit effect with his use of reverse curse technique, Gojo, just like what everyone else had expected, makes a dash for the exit. Sukuna immediately makes a dash to keep up with him while remarking that he isn't going to just let him escape. Grabbing his leg though, Gojo, still while constantly getting slashed, pulls him in and knees Sukuna into the floor. Towering over him, Gojo attempts to land a curse energy infused overhand, but misses, only cracking the floor as Sukuna manages to quickly weasel his way out. Standing there and looking at his opponent, Sukuna remarks that Gojo's still moving pretty well, considering that he's been activating his reverse curse technique at full output in order to survive the constant slashing. Gojo on the other hand notices something extremely important. To him, it looks like Malevolent Shrine itself is the heart of the domain, not Sukuna. Back inside of the headquarters, Yuji ponders what would happen if someone did destroy the heart of the domain, or like the shrine specifically. The big brain Kusakabe brings up that objects inside of domains don't tend to hold any special meaning or significance, so think of it as like it wasn't even there to begin with. Mei-san thinks that if it is a symbol of the domain, then you wouldn't even be able to destroy it, and even considering Gojo's insane skills, it doesn't look like he's taken any measures to actually try to destroy it. Suddenly, Gojo activates the new Shadow style Simple Domain, taking Kusakabe by surprise as he probably didn't expect to see this one. Yuji though noted that Gojo said one time he could use it, but wasn't able to actually teach it. During the battle, he was able to use his Simple Domain to counter the sure hit effect while simultaneously using Reverse Curse technique to heal its body. Confused, Yuji wonders how one even manipulates their own curse energy while Reverse Curse technique is active. Again, Gojo activates another use of the Simple Domain before darting at Sukuna and attempting to strike him. In an instant, he's once again pounded by the sure hit effect, layering Gojo with a plethora of cuts though. Again, he activates another use of Simple Domain and Reverse Curse technique, causing Sukuna to call this all a little bit tedious right now. Randomly though, everyone back at the headquarters is taken by surprise when they see Gojo start attacking Sukuna once more without using Reverse Curse technique to heal himself. Someone wonders if he's running low on curse energy, but Yuta refutes this as it's frankly impossible. There's no limit to Gojo's curse energy, even though there totally is. Speaking up though, Eno mentions that, like he said before, the assumption rate could currently be off. Right after domain expansion, he started using reverse curse technique at maximum output, which uses up twice as much curse energy, and that's not even taking into account the fact that Sukuna is also rushing at Gojo himself. With the two powerhouses of the series also rushing at each other once again, and the cuts not stopping for Gojo, everyone wonders if Gojo is about to lose. Jumping on Sukuna though and wrapping his hands around the back of his head, Gojo activates his curse technique reversal, before leaning back and pulling his hands up in preparation to end the fight. Blown away with what he's just witnessed, Yuta wonders if it's even possible. In his mind, the reason he wasn't able to heal himself for a moment was because Gojo was using reverse curse technique to heal his exhausted curse technique. Unleashing Red, Gojo shoots forth a blast of reverse curse technique, propelling Sukuna back into the shrine that makes up the center of his domain. Noting that he somehow managed to survive the blast, Gojo activates reverse curse technique to heal, and jokes that damn, this dude is really turning into a pain on the ass. Going into more depth on the insane feat Gojo just did, Yuta explains that a curse technique which has been burned out by using domain expansion is an entirely different matter than physical damage. It's like when a machine overheats, if it isn't broken, you have to let it cool down or it won't work again. Interpreting this, Maki makes it easier to understand by saying that reverse curse technique can repair damage, but it can't help with the cooling effects of it. However, it looks as if this understanding of the ability is completely wrong. Back in Shinjuku, and having made it out of the effective range, Gojo asks if Sukuna is able to expand the size of his area. Not even giving Gojo a second to think, Sukuna instantly expands the size of a Malevolent Shrine's domain expansion to its maximum. In the same moment, Gojo, to the shock of everyone, also expanded his Infinite Void for a second time. With everyone watching, they wonder if Gojo's really dumb enough to just fall into the same trap as before. Mei notices it first though, and Higuruma, who, by the way, like for a new sorcerer, is so big brain, states that Gojo switched conditions on the external and internal conditions of his barrier, which, in simple enough terms for myself and Yuji to understand, means that Gojo this time is able to protect himself against the attacks from outside of his domain. Reinitiating the battle once more, both Gojo and Sukuna trade hands back and forth, but not once do the hits actually end up landing on either side. Jumping back, Gojo is absolutely blown away as he understands that somehow Sukuna was able to use his domain expansion and amplification at the exact same time. On top of that, he's becoming more comfortable inside of his own Infinite Void, and his curse energy output is only increasing. So, in usual Jujutsu Kaisen combat, you cannot use an innate technique that is etched into your body while using a domain amp. But if you go and imbue your domain with a technique itself, then this is an entirely new situation. Throwing a punch, Sukuna manages to dodge back out of the way. However, as he pushes, trying to strike Gojo, the Six-Eyes Maniac manages to evade the strike and thump the side of Sukuna's body. Managing to spin out of Gojo's sight, he quickly understands that somehow, and while inside of his own domain, Sukuna turned off his sure hit effect. Knowing that the only ones who are unaffected by Infinite Void are Gojo and anyone he touches, Sukuna's plan is to expand his effective range and